Today I'm going to talk about probably the most least understood, maybe the most maligned glass container that people who collect bottles and jars um, totally overlook in many cases. Some specialize on them, but food bottles or food containers or condiment containers are very common in many places, and most people really don't appreciate them much, but I've collected them over the years because of the interest I have in glass in general, and I find some bottles that are pretty cool, and the history behind them. There's a number of bottles that have extensive history, and we all know a lot of them, even as today, existing today. Let's pick one of them out right now, and one of the most common bottles that you can probably find if you're digging or even looking at a house flea market or whatever. You're going to find this Joseph Campbell ketchup bottle. Now this bottle particularly here is probably 1906. I'd probably say it was a common. I probably dug it in that time period, a dump. There are hundreds of them. This is a hand-blown bottle, and it had an aluminum or metal cap with a cork, and it fit over that strange lip that you see here. The name on there is Campbell's. Now Campbell's known for soup, and during the 1860s they were producing soup, but over the years they went into making tomato ketchup. They were in competition with Heinz, who pretty much came out around the same time, producing pretty much the same things. Ketchup for Heinz was their mainstay, and this bottle here is not rare, but it is a cool bottle. And you'll find a lot of Campbell style bottles. There's different variants of this, and they're not that hard to find. I'd say 1906 is a good number for that one. Another, I just mentioned him, and that is Heinz himself. This is a ketchup bottle that is, again, turn of the century of 1900. Probably, I would say it's 1890s. So the reason that is significant is because after 1896, Heinz used the phrase 57 varieties. The number 57 for him was just sort of like a lucky number. They had more than 57 varieties of products on the market by that time. This is a ketchup bottle made before 1896, and you can see there's easily marked the date, and they changed over the years. This is a practically early one, but if you can see, I like to make a point to people. Screw cap. You always hear people maligning the screw cap bottle. Oh, it's not old enough because it's a screw cap. Well, here's an 1890 with a screw cap. Now, yeah, it's hand applied, but they used the cap on this bottle. Same thing with, let's see, same thing with the good old Yacht Club salad dressing. Now you see these with, usually you can see these bottles with a crown top, actually, and a screw cap. This is a machine-made screw cap bottle, and it's Yacht Club out of Chicago. Now, the company that made this was Thilman or something like that. They were actually English. They used an English recipe, and they were pretty prolific. They were sold several times. This company became other companies, but Yacht Club was one of the early salad dressing companies that starts way back in the 1880s. And if you find a non-machine made bottle, or a handmade bottle. These are pretty neat. This is probably before 1915, I would assume, 1914. It could turn orange, pink if you wanted to. Now, let's go to the mustards and pick out the king of all mustard companies, Charles Goulden. Now, Goulden made, at one point, I don't know, 60 different kinds of mustard. I read somewhere. He's German, started out in Germany, and he came here, and I think he went to Philadelphia. I'm not sure exactly. This bottle here is interesting. It's an patented 1898, I believe, and this was probably capers. That was a condiment that was used in the production of mustard, and so this is a capers, three-sided, very interesting looking bottle. And although it looks old because it's a sheared lip, it really is only probably 100, it looks like what, 120 years old, sort of, 119 years old. Green, standard capers color. Charles Goulden, he was a mustard man. And let me just show you one of his mustards, which is the most common of his bottles. And this is a Charles Goulden out of New York. He was out of New York, I think, and Philadelphia. He was nationally known by the time he was putting out mustard that we know it. He was all over the country, and he's still around today, as you know. There it is, barrel mustard, the typical barrel. It's a rolled lip, so it goes back a ways. Probably, I'm saying this bottle is probably 1880s. It's turning pink, 1890s. Again, rough period. I rarely dig in dumps that go beyond 1880s, only because most big dumps, areas that bottles were thrown in, well, before 1880s, there wasn't a lot of stuff people had to just disposable. Yeah, you know, it was not a, you know, you didn't buy salad dressing every day. It was a luxury for many people. Let's look at an interesting bottle here, which is a lot older than the rest of them. It's a sheared blown puff. It's a open bottle. This was probably, it's a cathedral pickle, considered cathedral pickle. What company made it? Your guess is as good as mine. There was a half a dozen glass companies back at this time period putting out these bottles. This bottle was dug in San Francisco, way out in the west. So when I dug it, the source of it, I wouldn't know where it is, but this is your typical Gothic style of the period, 1850s, late 1840s, and it looks pretty crude, and it is. People say, oh, well, the lip must have broke off. No, it was a puff. They blew these out, whew, just like that, annealed them, and then they put a cork and wax sealed them. Wax was a major way to get air, keep air out of your product. But you know, once that happened, once you opened them up, they were worthless. And you know, what do you use this bottle for after that? Nobody collected marbles back then. Let's go to some other familiar stuff, really. Oh, here's some guy. If you're used to the East Coast, if you dig and collect bottles, you're going to see this guy, L. Rokerush and Sons, Refined Oils. He's a Jewish oil distributor. He started out back with his family, but he went on to be, he's still in business, by the way. This company still exists. And this was probably an olive oil. You can see they have their symbol here, the six-sided star. This is a machine-made bottle. Now this came out of Brooklyn, as it claims, and They're still in there, I believe, but they're a national bottle. Let me look. I think I might have. Yeah. Here's another one. Same exact bottle, and it is an offset. It's a machine bottle, but it's early machine. So you'll see the seam going up one way, and then it will connect to the lip another way, on another angle. That's typical of that kind of bottle. So that was a very common company, and they're still in business today. And you're looking at this bottle probably, if I might make a guess, I'd say this bottle was probably 1913, 1914. It wasn't that old. What else did I hit here? We'll go real quick. Here's one of the other bottle jars, a Dundee marmalade. You'll find these all the time. They're very common. English, they had marmalade in them and other stuff. London, 1862. That's not when this jar was made. This jar probably made about 1900. They're still in business today. So you can still find this jar, maybe not exactly like this, but they still make this. And this probably comes out of a 1910 era dump, from what I can remember. And they're very common. One of the biggest companies that ever existed back in the day was another English company called Millen's. They made baby food. They were out in the 1860s, and Millen branched off. This is a large size. Usually it says infant food on it. This, after it became popular by 1890s, they just started putting Millen's Foods because it wasn't just for infants anymore. They expanded to invalids and hospital companies. Hospitals actually use Millen's for people trying to get well. All kinds of things. It was a milk-based product. Had other things in it. It was like formula bottle for formula for babies back in the day. And this is an early, I'd say 1890s, 1900 bottle. But being English, and if it was made in England, they could have hand blown these bottles up until World War I period, 1910 and 1918. So this is an English bottle, considering it, you find so many of them here in this country. What else? Oh, one more. Let's go here. Everybody will find these bottles if you're looking in a 1920s dump. White House vinegar. They're so common now that they really don't pull in much for collectors. This is a 1909 version, so this bottle probably was made probably in 1914. There's a seam going all the way up to the neck, and this style bottle went all the way up until, I guess, 1930. I don't know the cutoff date exactly, but you'll find these up until the 1930s for sure, and they go into gallon jugs if you're lucky. They also made a cruet that had a lip, a little pouring spout on them, and it was a very common bottle. This one, of course, it's a patent date of 1909, but I believe that this bottle is probably 1910, considering 1915, considering a machine-made bottle. And I don't know. That's it. Machine-made and non-machine-made bottles made for food are very common. You'll find them. One of the most common style bottle that will show up in most cases are, let me find something. Here's a very common one. This. You're going to see these a lot if you're in an early dump. These are English. The rolled lip. The color, the green, is a very common English color. This certain grass green color. The style is very plain. The lip is very plain. They were throwing this stuff out by the thousands. So they really put them out. You're going to find a lot of those bottles Here's an interesting one. Another food bottle that I think it's English. Double collar. And it could have been chow chow sauce, curry, whatever they put out. There's numbers under there. This is another 1890s to 1910, probably, English bottle. And it's cool. I like it. People would think it was some kind of beverage bottle, but it is not. They came in all different colors too. Here is a cereal milk jar, 1890 for sure, ground lip, and it's a big jar. And cereal milk was probably a predecessor to, I guess we'd call it malted milk jar. There's a screw top again, and again it is not machine made. This is hand blown. Ground stopper will let you know that. But don't let people just tell you that a screw cap bottle is not old enough, because they definitely are. Here's an example, one of the oldest examples of screw cap. This Mason with the Maltese cross. The 1858 we know is not the patent. This is 67 patent, so it could be close to that. It's an old bottle. It's beautiful green too. You don't see this in mason jars too much. So there you have it. My little quick review on food jars that are not really looked on with much favor, but there's thousands of varieties of them. I mean, from capers, which are very popular for people stick in their window. That's a common bottle. They still make that style today. Till, you know, your most uncommon bottle. Here's a ketchup bottle from a company from Allegheny, Pennsylvania. I never heard of this company. I haven't looked it up yet. The names, a lot of times you got to look underneath, under the bottle, to see the name of the company, because they had a paper label. It was this is a Crookshank Brothers. Sounds like one of Harry Potter's characters in his book. Crookshank, probably ketchup. There you go. Well, thanks again for looking at my stuff. I have thousands of bottles, as you're pretty figuring this one out already, and I'm not shy about picking the ones up that I like. Here's one interesting. The lip was a little wonky, and it's a pepper sauce, and it tells you right there, pepper sauce. So you find bottles that isn't flasky shape, but pepper sauce was one of the early food bottles that actually adopted a certain shape for their products. That's what makes a lot of bottles, food bottles, boring, is because they decided that certain bottles were going to represent a certain product, like the barrel of mustard was one of them. That's the barrel there. And we also have an earlier version of that Charles Gould with a flared lip. So is this one older? I don't know. It might not be. It's just a different style. Like I said, Gould put out 80 different kinds of mustard. I don't know, crazy number. He put out a lot of different stuff. So he was a big company, and his bottles will vary. So you'll find a different Golden. Don't be confused. You're still looking at the same guy. You're still looking at the same guy. Well, there you have it. Gotta run. Thanks for stopping in. Have fun digging. Bye.